This video, we're going to talk about Java loops. Loops are another kind of flow control construct in the Java language. So we looked at branches last module, and this time we'll look at loops. So just to kind of go over what we talked about with branches earlier, we have an if statement. Here's the flow control of the logic. We start with the code before it. We evaluate a condition. If it's true, we execute the code that's in that if statement braces or brackets. If it's false, we don't execute that and we sort of jump over it and just start executing the code after it immediately. If we look at if else, it's very similar. You have the code before again, you evaluate your condition. If it's true, you go ahead and execute the code in the braces. If the condition is false, we're going to execute the code in the else braces. So in this case, we either do execute code in the first set of braces or in the second set, and after that we'll go ahead and continue executing code after the entire statement. Okay, so now if we actually look at loops, very similar. We have code before, there's a condition we're going to execute. If it's true, we're going to go ahead and execute the code within the braces again, following the conditional statement. And then we go back to the condition statement. Unlike the if-else and if statements, we keep looping back to the condition as long as it's true. If it's true, we execute and come back. If it's false, then we go ahead and fall out of the loop or skip over the loop and go to the code after the loop braces. Okay, so let's look at this in actual code. So I have my class loops here. And here's my main function. Java has 4 different looping constructs, really 3 main ones, but there's one variation that's really pretty useful. But let's start with the for loop. For loop is probably one of the more common. So for loop has 3 different statements kind of chunked into or compacted into one line here. So you start with the for keyword. And now this first is an initialization statement. So you can set a variable like I am here, equal to 0. You can set it to some other value. This will execute once at the beginning. This is the conditional statement we were talking about in our flow control. This gets executed every iteration of the loop. And this final statement here also gets executed with every iteration of the loop. This will get executed at the end of the loop. So this once at the beginning, every execution, end of every execution. And inside our loop, I'm just going to go ahead and create a sum. I'm going to start with 0 and keep adding the index as we increment the index by 1. So this loop is going to execute 10 times because I have the condition where if s index is less than sum until num, which is 10, keep going. And it's going to keep going until s index is less than sum until num. So once s index is 10, this is no longer true, and we're going to fall out of it and go ahead and print out our sum. Okay, so that's our for loop. Now there's an enhanced version of the for loop that is used with arrays and containers. And we'll be talking about arrays in the next module, so don't worry about that too much. I just want to show you this so you have an understanding. But we have declared our array here, and then we go ahead and have our for loop. But this is just, it's syntactically so much prettier and just so much less work to write. We go ahead and say we have an int as our element in this array, and then we want to loop through all of the elements in the array. And so I can do the same calculations I did before with sum, and then I just sum up the elements in this array, and I'm going to end up with the same output from the regular for loop. Of course, this is only useful if you have an array or a container that you can loop through. There's no way to really convert our index loop up here into something like this. But it's probably the looping construct I use the most. Then we have a while loop, and a while loop is sort of a decomposed for loop, if you will. We have that same initialization statement up here, but it's just not part of the loop construct itself. And then we have the same condition that we saw before. And then we also have this same S-index increment that we saw before that was part of the loop construct in the for loop, where here it's just another line of code in the loop. But again, so we're going to do exactly what it says. While this evaluates to true, we're going to execute this code. Once this no longer evaluates to true, we're going to go ahead and leave the loop and do whatever code is right below it. Okay, and finally we have a do while loop. I'm showing this to you because it is one of the loop constructs in Java, but really I hardly see it used. I've hardly ever used it myself. Very similar to the while loop, except you are going to go ahead and execute the code in the do statement at least once. It doesn't matter what this evaluates to, this will execute at least once, and then if this condition holds true, you'll go ahead and do it again. Okay, so if we run this code, we've got 4 different loops: our for loop, our enhanced for loop, our while loop, and our do while loop, and functionally they all do the same. So if we go ahead and run this again, you'll see the for loop prints out 45, the enhanced for loop 45, 45, 45. So brief introduction to loops. Hope that helps you with your homework and everything else in this module. And enjoy your loops.